Respected ladies, listen to me closely, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do with a man is not chase him, not question him, not beg for his attention, but simply match the distance he has created. And when you stop running after him, something begins to change inside his mind. The silence gets louder, your absence becomes noticeable, and suddenly the woman he thought would always be there starts becoming the woman he is afraid to lose. There comes a moment in every relationship when you have to stop asking, how can I make him come closer? And start asking, what happens when I stop doing all the work? Because ladies, love cannot survive when one person is constantly reaching while the other person keeps retreating. If he takes a step back and you take 3 steps toward him, you are teaching him that he can keep moving away and still have access to your attention, your energy, your affection, and your emotional availability. But when you calmly match his distance, you are not playing a game. You are changing the conversation. You are saying, without saying a word, I care about you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you. And that message can hit a man much harder than another long text ever could. Think about a woman named Angela. Angela cared deeply about a man named Marcus. In the beginning, everything felt effortless. He called her first. He wanted to know about her day. He remembered small details. He made plans. He made her feel wanted. Then something changed. The calls became shorter. The messages became slower. The plans became uncertain. And Angela did what so many women do when they feel someone slipping away. She tried harder. She sent another message. She asked if something was wrong. She became more available. She tried to make conversations exciting. She started wondering what she had done. And every time Marcus pulled back, Angela moved closer. She thought closeness would fix the distance. But instead, the more she chased, the more comfortable he became with pulling away. One evening, Angela sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone. She had typed a message. Are you okay? You seem distant lately. She stared at it for almost 10 minutes. Then she deleted it. For the first time, she decided she was not going to chase an explanation from someone who was choosing distance. She put the phone down. She went to sleep. The next morning, Marcus noticed something strange. There was no message from Angela. At first, he didn't think much about it. Then the day went on. Still nothing. That evening, he checked his phone again. Nothing. And suddenly, a question entered his mind. Why hasn't she reached out? That question was the beginning of a shift. Not because Angela was manipulating him, not because silence is some magic trick, but because Marcus had become accustomed to her emotional availability. He had become accustomed to knowing that even when he withdrew, she would still be there trying to restore the connection. Now that pattern had changed, and when a familiar pattern disappears, the mind notices. Ladies, this is one of the most important lessons you can learn about relationships. You should never have to convince somebody to value your presence. Your job is not to become more impressive every time somebody becomes less interested. Your job is to remain grounded enough to recognize when you are giving more than you are receiving. When a man creates distance and you immediately chase him, his mind may interpret your behavior in ways you never intended. He may think, she'll always be there. He may think, I don't have to make much effort. He may think, even if I pull away, she'll come closer. And once someone believes they cannot lose access to you, urgency can disappear. But when you match his distance with dignity, something different happens. He has space to feel your absence. He has room to notice the difference between having you around and not having you around. He starts remembering the conversations, the laughter, the way you supported him, the little things you used to do. And sometimes he begins realizing that what he took for granted was actually valuable. But let me make something very clear. Matching his distance does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean ignoring him to punish him. It does not mean pretending you don't care. It means you stop over-functioning in a relationship that requires 2 people. If he sends 1 message, you don't need to send 5. If he stops making plans, you don't need to become the event planner of the relationship. If he stops communicating consistently, you don't need to carry the entire emotional weight on your shoulders. You simply step back. You observe, you allow his actions to speak. Because sometimes the greatest clarity comes when you stop filling every silence. And ladies, there is something powerful about a woman who can say, I love you, but I will not chase you. That woman is not heartless. She is healthy. She understands that love should be mutual. She understands that attention should not have to be begged for. She understands that consistency matters more than occasional affection. And most importantly, she understands that her worth does not rise and fall based on whether one man chooses to text her today. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. A few days after Angela stopped chasing, Marcus finally sent her a message. Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay? Angela looked at the screen. The old Angela would have responded immediately with everything she had been feeling. She would have explained how hurt she was. She would have asked why he had changed. She would have tried to reopen the emotional door as quickly as possible. But this time, she paused, not to manipulate him, not to make him wait. She simply asked herself one question: what do I actually want? And that question changed everything, because when you stop reacting to someone's distance and start responding from self-respect, you regain control of your own emotional life. You don't become desperate for an answer. You don't need to force a conversation. You don't need to prove your value. You simply allow reality to reveal itself. If he genuinely cares, he now has an opportunity to show it. If he doesn't, you have an opportunity to see that too. And both answers are valuable, because clarity is better than confusion. Consistency is better than potential. And peace is better than constantly wondering where you stand. So if he has been distant lately, don't immediately panic. Don't assume you have lost him. Don't assume you need to become more beautiful, more available, more entertaining, or more accommodating. Take a breath, step back, and watch. Sometimes the person who created the distance is the very person who becomes most aware of it when you stop crossing the space for them. And sometimes, ladies, that is when his mind begins asking questions he avoided before. Does she still care? Is she moving on? Did I push her too far? Why isn't she chasing me anymore? Was I taking her for granted? And those questions can force a man to confront something he could ignore while you were constantly reaching for him. His own behavior. Because when you stop rescuing the connection, he has to decide whether he is willing to participate in it. And that is where real relationships are tested. Not when everything is easy, but when one person stops carrying everything alone. So remember this: you don't match his distance because you want him to suffer. You match his distance because you refuse to suffer alone. You don't step back because you want revenge. You step back because you want truth. And you don't stop chasing because you stop caring. You stop chasing because you finally started caring about yourself too. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is not a paragraph. It is your changed behavior. It is your calm. It is your silence. It is your willingness to let someone show you what they truly want without forcing them to say it. And when you can do that, something beautiful happens. You stop living in fear of losing him, and you start becoming the woman who knows she will never lose herself again. And this is where many women misunderstand what is really happening. When you match his distance, the first thing that may happen is not that he immediately runs back. Sometimes he gets quiet. Sometimes he watches. Sometimes he says nothing at all. And that silence can make you question whether your decision was wrong. You might think, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he never cared. Maybe I should reach out one more time. But listen carefully. You cannot measure someone's feelings by how quickly they react to losing your attention. People process absence differently. Some people notice it immediately. Others notice it only after the routine has changed. And some people will never come back because they were only comfortable receiving what you were given. That may hurt, but it is still valuable information, because the purpose of stepping back is not to guarantee that a man returns. The purpose is to discover what happens when you stop doing the work for him. That's the truth. You are not stepping back to control his behavior. You are stepping back to reveal it. There is a huge difference. When you constantly reach out, you never get to see what he would naturally do. You are always creating the next conversation. You are always repairing the silence. You are always suggesting the next meeting. You are always asking what is wrong. And because you keep moving toward him, he never has to reveal whether he would move towards you. But when you stop, the relationship becomes honest. Now there is space. And inside that space, his intentions have room to become visible. Think about how powerful that is. Imagine a man who has become used to your good morning messages. He wakes up and sees your name. He gets used to your calls. He gets used to your laughter. He gets used to knowing that someone is thinking about him. Then suddenly you stop, not dramatically, not angrily, not with a speech. You simply stop forcing the connection. At first, he may enjoy the quiet. He may even feel relieved, but then something happens. The routine disappears, and the human mind is very sensitive to changes in routine. He may pick up his phone and instinctively look for your name. He may see an old conversation. He may hear a song that reminds him of you. He may pass a place where you used to spend time together. And suddenly, the absence becomes more real because presence can become familiar. But absence creates contrast, and contrast can reveal value. That is why sometimes a person doesn't fully understand what you meant to them until your energy is no longer constantly available. But ladies, I want you to hear this part with your heart. Do not become addicted to the idea of making a man miss you. That can become another form of emotional dependence. You don't want to spend your days wondering whether he checked his phone. You don't want to count how many hours it took him to text. You don't want to post pictures hoping he sees them. You don't want to disappear just to see whether he comes looking. That is still allowing him to control your emotional state. Real strength looks different. Real strength says, I am stepping back, and whatever happens next will teach me something. That's maturity. That's self-respect. That's emotional freedom. And when a woman reaches that point, she becomes very difficult to manipulate because she no longer needs a specific outcome. She wants love, but she does not need to beg for it. She wants commitment, but she will not negotiate herself into being chosen. She wants communication, but she will not carry both sides of the conversation. She wants a healthy relationship, but she understands that she cannot build one by herself. And that mindset changes the way a man experiences her, because suddenly he realizes something. Your attention was not guaranteed. Your presence was not guaranteed. Your emotional labor was not guaranteed. You were given those things because you wanted to. And if he wants them again, he has to participate. Now, this is where some men begin feeling an internal conflict. One part of him may say, give her some space. Another part may wonder, why isn't she reaching out? One part may tell him, she'll come back. Another part may quietly ask, what if she doesn't? And that little question can become surprisingly powerful. Because when someone knows they have unlimited access to you, they can postpone decisions. But when access is no longer automatic, decisions become more urgent. Now he has to decide. Does he actually want this woman? Does he miss her? Does he value the connection? Is he willing to make an effort? Or was he simply comfortable knowing she would always be available? Your distance doesn't answer those questions. His actions do. And that's why you have to resist the temptation to interpret every little sign. Maybe he likes your story. Maybe he watches your video. Maybe he sends a random emoji. Maybe he says, hey, stranger. Don't immediately turn one small action into a love story. Look for consistency. A man who truly wants to reconnect will eventually move beyond curiosity. He will make an effort. He will communicate. He will create opportunities to see you. He will become clearer. He will stop leaving you to guess, because interest is not proven by one message. It is proven by repeated behavior. And ladies, this is one of the biggest lessons in relationships. Stop being impressed by temporary intensity. Pay attention to consistency. A man can miss you and still not be ready for a relationship. A man can think about you and still choose not to act. A man can be attracted to you and still not be capable of giving you what you need. So don't confuse his emotions with his intentions. His mind may be full of thoughts about you, but his actions tell you what he is actually willing to do. And sometimes, when you match his distance, you discover something even more important. You discover yourself. You discover how much emotional energy you were spending trying to keep someone close. You discover how often you were checking your phone. You discover how much your mood depended on his attention. You discover how much of your life had quietly become centered around whether he was coming closer or pulling away. And when you step back, you begin taking that energy back. You start sleeping better. You start laughing again. You start focusing on your goals. You call your friends. You take care of your body. You return to the woman you were before you started questioning your worth. And that is the real transformation. Because sometimes the greatest thing that happens when you match his distance is not what happens in his mind. It is what happens in yours. You begin realizing that you were never supposed to chase love until you were exhausted. You were never supposed to prove that you deserved effort. You were never supposed to compete for basic communication. You were never supposed to lose your peace just because someone else couldn't decide what they wanted. And when that realization settles into your heart, your entire posture changes. And you don't become bitter, you become peaceful. You don't become cold, you become discerning. You don't stop loving. You simply stop abandoning yourself in the name of love. And believe me, ladies, there is a difference. The woman who says, I love you, but I can live without chasing you, carries a completely different energy. She is not trying to convince anyone. She is observing. She is listening. She is allowing life to reveal the truth. And sometimes that is exactly when the man who created the distance begins moving closer. Not because you manipulated him, but because he finally has to experience the reality of your absence. And if he comes back, don't celebrate the return alone. Ask yourself what changed. Is he communicating differently? Is he consistent? Is he making real effort? Is he ready to meet you halfway? Because you don't want the old relationship back with a temporary burst of attention. You want something healthier. You want something mutual. You want something that doesn't require you to constantly wonder where you stand. And if he cannot provide that, then your distance has still served a beautiful purpose. It has protected your peace. It has protected your dignity. It has protected your future. Sometimes the answer you receive from stepping back is not, he came back. Sometimes the answer is, I finally came back to myself. And that may be the most powerful return of all. There is another level to this that most people never talk about. When you match his distance, eventually he may begin to question the story he has been telling himself about you. Maybe he believed you would always be there. Maybe he believed you needed him more than he needed you. Maybe he believed that no matter how distant he became, you would eventually come running back. And when your behavior changes, that assumption gets challenged, not through an argument, not through confrontation, but through reality. You are no longer responding the same way, and now he has to rethink what he thought he knew. He may begin remembering the moments when you were always there for him, the nights you stayed up listening, the times you encouraged him when he doubted himself, the little messages you sent just because you wanted to make his day better, the way you noticed when something was wrong, even when he didn't say anything. Those things can become invisible when they happen every day. But when they disappear, their value can become much easier to recognize. That is why absence can create reflection, and reflection can create realization. But ladies, don't misunderstand me. You should never make yourself absent simply to create a reaction. If you turn your life into a strategy for making him chase you, you have not found freedom. You have simply found another way to remain emotionally attached. Your goal should not be to make him panic. Your goal should be to stop panicking yourself. That is the difference between playing a game and developing self-respect. A woman with self-respect doesn't say, I'm going to disappear so he'll miss me. She says, I'm going to stop overextending myself because I deserve reciprocity. And once you understand that difference, your behavior becomes natural. You don't have to calculate when to respond. You don't have to pretend you're busy. You don't have to post something designed to make him jealous. You don't have to make another man visible just to get his attention. You don't have to perform indifference. You simply live. You continue your life. You continue your goals. You continue your friendships. you continue becoming the woman you were created to become. And if he notices your absence, that's his experience to process. Now imagine what can happen inside his mind when he sees that you're no longer waiting around. He may wonder if your feelings have changed. He may wonder if someone else has your attention. He may wonder if he pushed you too far. He may wonder whether the door is still open. And suddenly, he is experiencing the uncertainty that you experienced while he was distant. But here's the beautiful part. You don't have to rush in and remove that uncertainty. If he wants clarity, he can communicate. If he wants closeness, he can move closer. If he wants another chance, he can show you. This is what healthy accountability looks like. You don't punish him. You simply stop protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. And sometimes, ladies, that is the lesson someone needs. Not because you want them to suffer, but because people cannot learn the value of something if they never experience its absence. Think about a man who has been given unlimited access to a woman's time. He can call whenever he wants. He can disappear whenever he wants. He can come back whenever he wants. He can receive affection without giving clarity. He can receive emotional support without offering emotional security. Eventually, that dynamic feels normal. But when the woman steps back, the normal disappears. Now he has to ask himself whether he actually wants to build something or whether he simply enjoyed the benefits of having her around. That question can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary because relationships become unhealthy when one person gets all the benefits while the other person carries all the uncertainty. And this is where you need to be honest with yourself. Are you matching his distance because you finally understand your value? Or are you matching his distance because you want him to chase you? Those two motivations may look identical from the outside, but they feel completely different inside. The first brings peace. The second brings anxiety. If you are checking your phone every 5 minutes, wondering whether he has noticed your silence, you're still chasing. You're just chasing from a distance. Real detachment means you don't need to know what he's thinking every minute. You don't need to monitor his social media. You don't need to decode every song he posts. You don't need to ask mutual friends about him. You don't need to create stories in your head. You simply allow his behavior to speak. And that is incredibly powerful. Because when you stop filling in the blanks for him, he has to fill them himself. When you stop explaining your worth, he has to decide whether he recognizes it. When you stop asking for effort, he has to decide whether he is willing to give it. When you stop chasing clarity, he has to decide whether he wants to provide it. And that is where you discover whether you are dealing with a temporary distance or a permanent lack of interest. Now let's go deeper. Sometimes a man pulls away because he is overwhelmed. Sometimes he has personal struggles. Sometimes he is afraid of vulnerability. Sometimes he needs space to process his emotions. Sometimes he simply doesn't know how to communicate what he's feeling. And sometimes, yes, he is losing interest. That's why you cannot automatically interpret distance as hidden love. You have to remain grounded. Matching his distance does not mean assuming that he secretly loves you. It means giving the situation enough room to reveal the truth. If he needs space and genuinely cares, healthy communication can eventually bring him back toward you. If he is overwhelmed, he can explain. If he wants the relationship, he can participate. And if he doesn't want it, stepping back allows you to stop wasting your energy trying to change his mind. Either way, you win clarity. And clarity is priceless because uncertainty can keep you trapped for months. You can spend months asking, what does he mean? Why did he change? Why does he watch my stories? Why does he disappear? Why does he come back? Why does he say he misses me but never makes plans? But eventually you have to stop asking what his behavior means and start asking what his behavior is doing to you. Is this relationship bringing you peace? Is it bringing you security? Do you feel respected? Do you feel chosen? Do you feel emotionally safe? Because love is not only about how strongly you feel about someone, it is also about how that relationship makes you feel about yourself. And if you are constantly anxious, constantly confused, constantly waiting, constantly trying to earn consistency, then something is wrong with the dynamic. You deserve a relationship where you don't have to constantly decode someone's intentions. You deserve a man who understands that communication is part of love. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel foolish for wanting consistency. You deserve someone who can say, I'm busy right now, but I'll call you later, instead of disappearing and leaving you guessing. You deserve someone who can have difficult conversations instead of using distance as an escape. And when you start believing that, your standards change. You stop accepting crumbs because you're afraid the plate will disappear. You stop celebrating bare minimum effort. You stop calling inconsistency mystery. You stop calling emotional unavailability depth. And you stop confusing anxiety with chemistry. That is when your entire dating life can change, because you are no longer asking, how do I make him want me? You are asking, is this man capable of giving me the kind of relationship I want? That is a completely different question. One makes you chase, the other makes you evaluate. One puts him on a pedestal, the other puts both people on equal ground, and that is where healthy love begins. So if he has created distance, don't rush to fill it. Let the space exist. Let him experience your absence. Let yourself experience your own presence and watch what happens next. Maybe he will come closer. Maybe he will communicate. Maybe he will finally understand what he has been risking. Or maybe he will continue walking away. Whatever happens, don't betray yourself to change the outcome. Because the woman who can lose someone without losing herself has discovered a level of strength that no relationship can take away. And sometimes, the moment he realizes that you are no longer afraid of losing him is the moment he begins to understand what it means to truly lose you. And now something even deeper can happen inside his mind. When you stop chasing, he may begin comparing the silence he feels now with the warmth he once received from you. He remembers your presence, your patience, your encouragement, and suddenly he realizes that what felt ordinary was actually something special. But this is where you must remain strong. If he comes back, don't immediately give him everything he had before. Don't punish him, but don't ignore what happened either. Let his actions speak louder than his words. If he says he misses you, watch what he does. If he says he wants you, watch whether he makes an effort. If he says things will be different, watch whether his behavior actually changes. Because real change doesn't need a dramatic announcement. You can see it in consistency. A man who truly values you will not only miss your presence, he will begin understanding the responsibility that comes with having you in his life. And if he doesn't come back, don't let that destroy you. Sometimes distance doesn't bring someone back. Sometimes distance reveals that you were holding on to someone who had already let go. And as painful as that truth may be, it can also be your freedom. Because you were never meant to spend your life convincing someone to choose you. You were meant to be loved with intention, respected with consistency, and chosen without confusion. So match his distance, not with revenge, but with peace. Step back, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. And when you do that, whether he returns or not, you have already won something priceless. You have found yourself again. Ladies, remember this. Matching his distance is not about making him chase you. It is about refusing to chase someone who has stopped meeting you halfway. When you step back with peace, you create space for truth to reveal itself. Maybe he realizes your value and comes closer. Maybe he finally understands that your presence was never guaranteed. Or maybe he continues walking away. Whatever happens, don't measure your worth by his response. The greatest victory is not making him miss you. The greatest victory is reaching the place where you no longer need him to. Let him experience your absence. Let him think. Let him decide. But while he is figuring out what he wants, you figure out what you deserve. You deserve consistency. You deserve communication. You deserve effort that doesn't have to be begged for. You deserve a love that gives you peace instead of constantly making you question your place. So stop chasing. Stop over-explaining. Stop proving. Stand still. Breathe. Live your life. because the right person will not require you to abandon yourself just to keep them. And if your distance makes him realize your value, let his actions prove it. But if your distance reveals that he was never willing to meet you halfway, let that truth free you. Either way, you don't lose. You come back to yourself. And sometimes that is the love story you needed all along.